Hello, everyone. Welcome to Faith in Later Life. As part of our Love My Neighbour campaign, we're talking about loneliness today. And I thought, who better to talk with than Jeremy Sharpe, the UK Director of National Charity Linking Lives, whose strapline happens to read, "Together we can end loneliness." And we'd really love to see loneliness end too. So welcome, Jeremy. So pleased to have you with me here today.
Hi, Alex. Yeah, good to see you.
Jeremy, tell us more about why ending loneliness matters. Like, is it a big deal, really?
Yeah, I think I'm bound to say yes, definitely it is. It's something that I think can affect all of us at different times of our lives. I think really there's a difference between loneliness and social isolation. So loneliness is something that's very much a subjective thing. It can affect us at different points in our lives, and there's often not much that we can do about it. That makes it a pretty major issue for anyone that it affects. Social isolation is something that's much more objective and really focuses on maybe people that are stuck in rural areas or in environments where it's difficult to engage with other people. So yeah, so that's I guess the background. I think there's something around solitude as well, which is something that we hear about, and that's maybe more of a chosen thing, and something that we see a lot in the Bible as well, as Jesus chose to go to lonely places. And yeah, so it can be a positive thing as well to be on your own, but I think we're talking more about loneliness being something that's not chosen, something that is inflicted on us in that sense, and it can be a real challenge.
Yeah, so how is it bad for us?
I think there's a number of different ways. There's lots of research that's been done on this. I think from a biblical point of view, the first thing that God said wasn't good was for man to be alone. So I think it's very much hardwired into us for us to be people of community, people that are engaging with those around us as often as we can. Some of the research shows that there's the impact around social isolation and loneliness can affect us mentally. So it can make us more prone to depression, twice as likely to suffer with Alzheimer's, is another quite shocking statistic. And then on a more physical level, can lead to heart disease, hypertension. It's the equivalent of smoking 15 cigarettes a day. That's a figure that often we hear, and the equivalent of being alcoholic, and more harmful than not exercising. So it's very much something that's tangible, can affect us in lots and lots of different ways. And so, yeah, it's just really important for us to be aware of those possible side effects for ourselves and for other people around us.
So it's definitely a big deal.
Yeah, yeah.
Who would you say is the most affected by loneliness, Jeremy?
Yeah, I mean, I think all of us are, as I said just now, but I think there are particular groups who can be more affected than others. We're particularly interested as a charity in older people, and 2 million over 75s in England live alone. So that makes them much more prone to loneliness. 500,000 older people go 5 to 6 days without seeing or speaking to anyone. Which again is really scary to think about the actual people that are involved as part of those numbers. So I think definitely older people are amongst some of the key members of society that are affected by this. But more recent research has found that young people particularly are at risk of loneliness. So 40% of young people say that they feel lonely at different times in their lives. So it's I think we need to be very much aware of that group, as well as those sort of older people that we come across on a regular basis.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Jeremy. Obviously, our Love My Neighbour campaign is our winter campaign to help reach our older neighbours and to love them, and hopefully to reduce some of that loneliness. We're running that campaign in the winter. Obviously, we're called to love our neighbour at all times. But do you think there's something different about winter? Do you think that for older people, loneliness does get worse during the winter?
Yeah, definitely. I think again, not just older people, but particularly older people. So as soon as almost the clocks go back, that's can be a real trigger for older people, just beginning to kind of go in on themselves. And unfortunately, the linking of Halloween on the 31st of October, and the shorter nights and the colder temperatures around them can be a real concern, and just, as I say, just make people go in on themselves. There's a particular chemical called oxytocin, which warmth triggers oxytocin, and that greatly improves our mental health. And I think just that in itself is something which, it just shows how important it is for us to stay warm in order to reduce any impact on loneliness. There's all sorts of things like depression and sleep problems, lethargy as well, that can lead to that can be a result of being on your own and just struggling, particularly during the winter months.
Okay. Churches are really good at meeting the needs of older people in general, but what have you found are some of the ways in which churches can help to reduce loneliness among older people?
Yeah, I mean, I think particularly just being aware in events and activities that are happening within the church building, just looking out for those people who maybe would normally be there, but just their attendance might reduce over the winter. So just being sensitive to that and aware of that. Encouraging people within church to look out for those around them, I think, is really important. So we all have people that we come across, whether regularly or occasionally, who we think may occasionally struggle with loneliness. So just encouraging people to be aware of that. And just looking for signs. Often, there's not going to be a label that anyone wears to say that they struggle with loneliness, and there's very much of a stigma around that. So it's just looking out for signs around maybe anxiety, reduced social interaction within church, and, as I say, those patterns of attendance where maybe people might drop off during the winter months. So I think those are some of the more informal things. We run lots of activities and events and initiatives that address loneliness, that are mainly aimed at helping churches to address this on a local level. So we've got a relatively easy package which enables churches to set up and run befriending programs, and there are 50 of those running around the country at the moment in partnership with churches. So that's one example of a model where volunteers can go and visit people in their own homes, those who are outside of the orbit of the local church, and that's a great way of just really coming alongside those people who are most at risk of loneliness. And yeah, there's a number of other activities that I think we can run as churches in response to the winter months. Obviously, the warm welcome spaces are a great example of that. So if there's about over 1,000 organisations, many of them churches, that run warm welcome spaces over the winter between October and March. So we're one of the partners with that, and we'd certainly always encourage churches to engage with that if they can, and it doesn't involve too much extra capacity and volunteers to run something like that. So there's lots of opportunities out there. It's just really looking out for them and engaging with which ones are best for your church organisation.
Yes. So if a church wanted to find out more about your befriending service and the training you give and all of that stuff, where could they go to find out more? How can they get connected?
So the best way is our website, which is linkinglives.uk. There's all sorts of information on there about setting up a befriending scheme. We run a regular training session for volunteers called Good Conversations, and that just helps to equip volunteers that are running or operating in spaces like community cafes or drop-in centres, and just helps to kind of upskill them in just skills like listening, effective listening skills, boundaries, safeguarding, those sorts of things. So we run regular training on that, and then we also run webinars around how each of us can make an impact and a difference on a day-to-day basis. That's called Power of One. So there's lots on the website, and all the information's there.
Right. And do the webinars and training seminars, do they cost a lot of money? Could a church that hasn't got much money access that kind of thing?
Yep, sure. So the Power of One that I mentioned is an hour-long webinar, and that's free.
Oh,
The Good Conversations training is normally 2 hours, either online or face-to-face if it can be arranged. Generally, that's £5 per volunteer. So if there's a church that's got a number of volunteers, then hopefully that's not too much to prevent that. The befriending scheme setting up is a little bit more involved, and there's an annual partnership fee for that, and an amount in the first year. So that's £400 in the first year, and then that reduces from there. So but again, that's all on our website.
Yeah. Okay, that's good. That's not going to prevent people from learning more and engaging more. That sounds really good. Our Love My Neighbour campaign, a couple of the elements that we have in it is actually about individuals reaching out to their neighbours. And what we want to encourage people to do is to pray for their neighbour and to get to know them a little bit, or hopefully a lot. But Jeremy, do you think individuals can really make a difference through a couple of things like that, praying and getting to know people?
Yeah, I do. I mean, it does take an investment of time, but I think there are some key things that we can do that are relatively straightforward, and most of us, as long as we can engage in a normal conversation, can put some of these into place. I think it's really good to just gain the confidence of the person that we're talking to be as sincere as we can. People do pick up very quickly if we've got ulterior motives. So just being sincere. And kind of listen to verbalized and perceived issues. So as I mentioned earlier, people aren't going to probably say to you that they're feeling lonely, but you can pick up just signs of that in conversations, and just to be aware of that as we get to know people. And I think sharing our own news as well. Certainly, I mean, I visit a gentleman who's 97 who lives in my local area. And he's a great guy. It's been really good to get to know him in the last year. But he loves to hear about my situation, my family life, what's been going on. For him, that's just a window on the rest of society. He's still pretty active. But, I think people like to hear what's going on in other people's lives. Just being aware of boundaries as well. There's a bit of a note of caution that sometimes we can get a little bit caught into some situations where people might try and take advantage of us. So it's just being a little bit aware of that. It's something that we mention in some of our training. But I'd say overall, just ask God for wisdom, really, in who and how to contact, and he'll give us thoughts and ideas of what to say and what not to say. And we've certainly seen that, and I've seen that in my life as I've come along and got to know people as much as possible locally and in the wider community.
Yeah, that's such a good point about exercising wisdom. And of course, if we're praying for our neighbours, then hopefully God will inspire us with what's the right way for us and what's the right way for them to connect with them a bit more. So it doesn't sound like it's too difficult to move from a good morning to something that begins to look more like a friendship or a relationship. Looks like anybody could do it. What would you say?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, as I said at the beginning, I think it does take time sometimes, but it's all about making people feel as comfortable as possible, and not judging, and just really living out our Christian faith in as natural a way as possible. And I think people really do respond to that, even if at first they might not necessarily know that we're Christians. But I think having that real concern and love and compassion for people is something that really they do notice and appreciate, and then it can move on from there. But I think just praying into these opportunities, it does definitely lead to some great ways that we can come alongside people and support them.
And I think with any relationship, whether it's like in your befriending schemes or church friendships or getting to know our neighbours, we have to be prepared to be in it for the long haul. don't we? You know, real mutual relationship isn't something that happens overnight. And sometimes, as you said, it requires us to share something of our lives with them. And I think people love to hear stories and
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah,
get him.
no,
We're all a bit nosy, aren't we? So
yeah,
it's good
that's
to
right.
good to tell each other
Yeah,
some of our family news and that kind of
yeah.
thing.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's really important to remember, is that it's very much of a mutual thing. It's not something where
Yeah.
we're going out of our way to support other people, but it's really all about us learning from and hearing from them. I mentioned that the guy that I visit, I certainly pick up a lot of, you know, amazing information and background and then, you know,
Mm,
inspiration about his life every time I visit him. So
yeah.
yeah, but hopefully he gets some benefit from it, and he, you know, he does say that he really appreciates me coming over. So
Yeah, I'm
yeah,
sure. And you know, ending loneliness can't just be about having something done to you. It has to be that two-way thing so that you
yeah,
can, you know, so that it can come to life, that relationship can come to life for you,
yeah,
rather than being spoken at. So
yeah.
well, let's see what together we can all do this winter to end loneliness. Thank you so much, Jeremy, for joining me today and
Okay,
taking the time. I really appreciate it. We'd love to see Christians everywhere join in with our Love My Neighbour campaign this winter. We're going to run it from November to March. So if you're watching this video in January or February, it's not too late to get on board. And we'd love you to head over to our website at faithinlaterlife.org to see how you can get involved, to love your neighbour and help end loneliness this winter. Thanks for listening.